Hello, good people, and welcome back to Unit 2, the Constitution, on the 5 constitutional compromises. I got real long-winded in the last one, so here's your last two, okay? All right, bringing it home. Issue number 4. How should the executive leader be chosen? The question here, do we trust the people to do it themselves, or should we get their lawmakers to do it on their behalf? That's the actual question here. So how should the executive leader be chosen? By the people or by the legislature? Okay, do you trust the everyday average person on the street or not? Side 1 said, no, we don't. So out here to the side, you can go ahead, does not trust the people. Okay, so write it out here besides these bullets, does not trust the people. Side 1 out here is Congress chooses. So you have your 2 people, or however many people you got in the House, and then you have your one person in the House that represents your district, and then you have your 2 senators from your state, and the 3 of them all get together and they say, you know who would be best for y'all? I think it should be this person, or I think it should be that person, whoever it is. Okay, and we have a 2-party system, so they would only be able to choose the Republican candidate for president or the Democratic candidate for president. Now, you could choose a third party. That's not really a good idea. We'll talk about that in Unit 3. So, Congress, okay, both the House and the Senate, the people who represent you in the House and the Senate at the federal level, will get to elect the president since they're already elected by the people. The logic here, since you already picked them to be your lawmaker, why don't you just go ahead and let them lawmake and choose a leader on your behalf? All right. Now, states who do this already with their governor are like, yes, let's do that. Okay. Because there are a few states at that point in time in the 1780s who were like, you know what, we don't trust the people. They're probably dumb. All right, let's go ahead and just let these legislators, all right, the people who make laws for the state, let's let them pick the state leader or the governor instead of the people, okay? And states who are already set up like this are like, yes, let's just do this at the federal level too. All right, however, on the flip side of this, states who do trust the people, typically speaking, and are like, let's let the citizens choose, all right, said that the citizens should elect the president directly and be like, listen, we set up a democracy for, or a representative democracy for a reason. Let them choose their leader, okay? So citizens, states who let the people choose the governor and let the people choose their state leader are like, yes, let's also do this at the federal level. Okay, so instead of just like straight up letting the people choose or straight up letting the lawmakers choose, we do a weird combination of the two, and we call this the Electoral College. All right, so here's the deal. This starts way back 10 years before an election happens with the census. Okay, that's our our every 10-year population count. For real, that is all it is. Okay. It has a lot of impacts, and we'll discuss those in a later unit, but it is our population count. So, in order to elect the president, each state gets these things called electoral votes, all right? So, the number of votes that you get is not just pulled out of thin air. It is equal to the number of people you have in Congress. So, remember, Congress is the House, the population House, and the Senate, the equal House, together. So, everybody has 2 people in the Senate, regardless of how large or small your state is. And then everybody has a differing amount of people in the House depending on how big your population is. So if the census comes back and has, like, let's say that you gained a person in the House. So let's say North Carolina, for example, we now have 14 people in the House. All right, that gives us 1 more vote for president. So this population count is pretty important on a lot of different levels. So I'll give you a map and tell you what this looks like in a second. But in November, the people vote in every state, and the candidate or the party who wins each state gets their number of electoral votes. So currently, we have a 2-party system. We have a Republican Party and a Democratic Party, and the 2 of them kind of go back and forth on who has the power of the presidency. So it looks like this, right? Based on your population, that's how many people that you get in the House. And this also has 2 added for everybody's senators, okay? So we have 13 humans in the House because that's how big our population is. And we have 2 added in the Senate, so we get 15 electoral votes. Now, let's take 2016, for example. So Donald Trump was the Republican nominee for that party, and Hillary Clinton was a Democratic nominee for their party. So we can either give our 15 votes to Trump or we can give them to Hillary. How do we know? Well, it depends on what the people say. So if the people vote, and if 51% or more vote for the Republican candidate, the Republican Party gets our 15 votes. Now, on the flip side of that, if the Democratic candidate receives 51% of the vote or more, the Democratic candidate gets 15 votes. Okay? We rinse and repeat that process for every single state from right to left, because that's how our time zones work. Okay? When it's 7 o'clock here in North Carolina, it's 6 p.m. in Tennessee, it's 5 p.m. in Texas, all right? Well, parts of Texas, and it's 4 p.m. in California. All right, so by the time we get all the way over here to big old honkin' California on the West Coast, we've got a pretty good idea of who is going to be president and who is not. Okay, so let's see how it looked in 2016. So, for example, any state that is blue, you can go ahead and safely assume that the majority of the people in that state, at least 51%, voted for the Democratic candidate, which in 2016 was Hillary Clinton. So all of them got all of that state's number of votes. And then all of the states who are colored in red, the majority of their people, at least 51%, voted for the Republican candidate, who was Donald Trump. And so this is how it kind of shook out in 2016. So if you add up all of these red states and all these blue states, these are the numbers that happened. Okay, so here's the deal. Whoever has 270 votes first wins the presidency, regardless of how many people voted for them straight up. Okay, because just the straight up popular vote and like this number of people voted for this person and that number of people voted for someone else, that doesn't matter. It is how many electoral votes you have. So, for example, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump in the popular vote by a little over 1 million people, but that's because she carried a lot of these big states. So, New York, California, Illinois, those 3 states are pretty large in terms of their population. So, there are more people living in all the blue states than there are in all the red states. However, the electoral votes are what count, not just population. Okay? Let's skip over that. Beep, boop, bop. And then issue number 5, who gets more power, the state or the federal level? So, this is the issue that shapes our first 2 political parties. Not slavery, not getting rid of slavery, not the legislative branch, but states versus federal levels getting power. So, you'll see how petty they are in a second. They even name themselves after the level they like the best, the Federalists. Congrats, very original naming, 10 out of 10, recommend to a friend. So, they love this new Constitution, okay? So, while we're out here writing our new governmental document, we call it the Constitution. The Federalists love this. They're like, yes, it looks great. All right. So, the Constitution has a little preamble, okay, and previous before. It's just a little intro paragraph. If you were thinking about our Constitution as an essay, it is just the intro paragraph for how our government's going to work. All right, so it's got an intro paragraph and then 7 body paragraphs or articles, and they're like, yes, this is good. It doesn't need anything else. We don't have to put anything in there, okay? They believe the federal government should be supreme and should be the most powerful because they're like, listen, you and your little states had your chance in the AOC, okay, and you didn't work it out, so we're going to have to go ahead and take over and have a little more power at the federal level. Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay are like the VIPs of this party. All right, Alexander Hamilton ends up becoming the Secretary of the Treasury. He's the money man, at least in George Washington's presidency. James Madison ends up becoming president, and John Jay ends up becoming the first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. All right, now on the opposite side, real original name in here, just 2 for 2. All right, the anti-federalists. They obviously don't like the federal level of government. They like the level below that, which is the state government. They do not like this new Constitution because they're like, all it has is an intro paragraph, 7 body paragraphs, and not nary a word about our rights. Okay, the anti-federalists are extremely concerned with their individual liberties or their freedoms. They think that if there's no list of them, a list of their rights, aka a Bill of Rights, if there's not a list of their rights in this new governing document, then this Constitution is too powerful and we are no better than when we had a king. That's how the anti-feds feel, okay? They also favor the wealthy over the common people. These are typically the people who don't trust the everyday average citizen to choose their own leader for them, okay? Thomas Jefferson, so the guy who wrote down the actual Declaration of Independence, Samuel Adams, the original leader of the Sons of Liberty, and the not great beer maker, and Patrick Henry. He's the guy who jumped up on a pew in a church and said, "Give me liberty or give me death." All right, that was him. All right, so that's the anti-feds. So the question here is, are we going to have a list of our rights or not? All right. Now, the feds are like, no, we don't need a list. And the anti-feds are like, well, we're not signing your document until we get a list. So what happened? They got their list. All right. Just as a side note, this little "Don't Tread on Me" flag is one that is typically used to represent the ideals of the anti-federalists. It has resurfaced and been reused. Even if it's incorrect, it has been reused in recent years to describe people who are relatively conservative politically. So that is that. Now, if you have seen this rattlesnake before, all right, this rattlesnake you might have seen when it was broken up into little baby pieces, but now it is not. It has made a miraculous recovery. You go, little snake. All right, the result here is the Bill of Rights. All right, the Federalists are like, yes, we will sign. We will add your little list of the liberties if you will sign this document. All right, and we call signing this document ratifying. Okay. So in order to make this Constitution or this governing document legit, we have to have all 55, or at least a majority of them, sign it. Okay, so ratify means to pass or approve. All right, and it's ratified in 1789. So for 2 years, from 1787 to 1789, they're either fighting about the Constitution in person in meetings or fighting about it in letters back and forth in newspapers. Okay, and we call those the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist Papers. All right, so that has been the third and final installment of the 5 constitutional compromises.